The depths is the layer of darkness, gloom, evil, and questionable bargains, but also mighty dragons and great dark skeletons. But were they all dragons? That is the question which we are going over together with Zeltik, so be sure to leave a like, subscribe and press that notification bell. Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom introduced the concept of immortal dragons, as even the kind ones from Skyward Sword eventually died. Same goes for the Leviathans as seen in 3 of the surface map's most remote and desolate corners. Naturally, the depths mirror most of what is above and tells us how all the settlements of Hyrule really are by the presence of mines. But what are the great skeletons a representation of then?
Are they meant to be reflections of the Leviathan bones found above, or something else? This is our first mystery, as they're found directly below the surface Leviathans. Then we have the second mystery, the cap, tunic and trousers of the Wild. This was the original hero outfit obtainable in Breath of the Wild, and was specifically designed for this incarnation of Link. Though it's unclear how canon this set is to Link's story, as he didn't wear it during the true ending of Breath of the Wild, nor the opening of Tears of the Kingdom. And this one, found in the depths, might not have belonged to him at all. Since the only green tunic Link canonically wears in this game is the archaic tunic, found on the Great Sky Island, which can't even be upgraded. So the Wild set is still the only classic green outfit for this Link. But it's not easily obtained. The set is guarded by a sinister foe, the very same evil that plagued the Deku Tree in the depths. If you explore the area surrounding the 3 dark skeletons on foot, it quickly becomes clear that there is something up with these places. In fact, the dark skeletons are 3 of only 7 locations in the depths home to Gloom Hands, the nightmarish phantoms of the Demon King. The only other Gloom Hands in the depths are those found on the approach to Ganondorf himself, or those near the Korok Forest, part of Ganondorf's plan to disrupt Link's quest.
In other words, paths you need to cross in order to get to the true ending of the game. The only other place these spawns from hell are found in the Dark Layer, and not a part of the main quest, is Davdi Island, where the Cap of the Wind is found. Not counting the Dark Link set, this is the only set that was not tied to an amiibo from Breath of the Wild, found in the depths. And this must have a deeper meaning. Alright, enough about the approach, let's address the bones in question, which do not look like the Leviathans above at all. And seeing that these are all Zonite treasure chests in the depths, it points to the fact that they have been there since the distant past. Meaning that these potential dragons were dead long prior to Raru's reign on the surface. But did they live in the depths exclusively, or also on the surface? After all, Dinrol, Nadra and Farosh all follow a path both over the surface and underneath it in Tears of the Kingdom. As Fishnewt 1331 wrote to us, the Great Dark Skeletons are all serpent-like in build, as the long skeletal remains are similar to the spiritual dragons of this game. That goes also for their skulls, which are nothing like the Leviathans or even Child Leviathans found right above. Even so, unlike the still alive dragons, these are clearly dead, but their size is absolutely gigantic, stretching across a major part of the provinces of the depths they are found in. Though sadly, as Fishnewt also highlighted, we don't get a sense of what they were beyond the massive size and the threats lurking around them, plus the horriblance within its remains, though they're certainly dark as the name suggests. You see, dragon locations and name references and bones tied to dragons are found in both Breath of the Wild's and Tears of the Kingdom's maps. And right here we realize that the presence was far greater than what the current ones imply. After all, we have a Dragon's Exile above, near where the Great Gerudo skeleton is located, and also the Lightning Temple. Another one that comes to mind is the Dragonbone Maya in Hebron. Then you have the dragon-like Moragia we battle on top of Death Mountain in Elden. Wait a minute. Gerudo, Hebron, and Elden. The exact provinces and in near proximity of the Great Dark Skeletons beneath. On the other side, these skeletons are far bigger than any of the dragons we encounter in this game, bar for one. Before we head over to that one, we first have to recognize that traditional one-headed, two-eyed dragons in this game are different from past Zelda entries. You know, Aguamentus, the original Gleeok, Volvagia, who probably served as the name inspiration for Moragia, Valoo, potentially also Stalord, and naturally, Argorok. All of them, minus Valoo, were threats who followed traditional European dark evil dragon tropes. Then came Skyward Sword with Eldin, Lanayru, and Farrell, the protectors of the surface and the precursors of Dinral, Naydra, and Farosh.
But how are these latter three dragons different? Well, we can infer from Tears of the Kingdom's story that these three weren't originally born as dragons in the traditional sense. They might have instead achieved draconification by swallowing Zonai's secret stones. I'll just take this moment to say that if you haven't beaten Tears of the Kingdom, we're going to get into some heavy spoilers for the story. Of course, during Tears of the Kingdom, we see two examples of mortals transforming into skyworms, both by consuming secret stones. Princess Zelda and Demon King Ganondorf, who transformed into the Light Dragon and Demon Dragon respectively. The ultimate example of the theme of duality and opposites that is so important to this game. But now we know that it's possible to become a dragon by swallowing a secret stone, could these dark skeletons have once been others who underwent this forbidden practice? Just like Dinral, Naydra and Farosh might have done in order to become the Servants of the Springs. Since everything in the depths is a mirror of what is found above it on the surface, perhaps the truth is that the three Leviathans of the surface were the original set of dragons associated with light, opposing the three dark skeletons beneath them, though all six are now gone, fossilized and forgotten.
Once again, let's remember this game's dragon themes and dualities. But why do we find the hero set of the wild down here? Maybe because this tunic belonged to a past hero. A potential unknown Link who slayed these three creatures of darkness, who the Zonai commemorated by scattering 3 pieces of his clothing in the remains of these. Keep in mind, they are stored in Zonai chests. It wouldn't be uncommon, as dragon slayers are usually the definition of heroes, especially in European legends. Dark evil mortal European dragons standing in contrast to far more spiritual, immortal Asian, or in this case, kind Japanese dragons. Kami, or gods, and people who aim to become like said gods, though at a price, losing themselves. That is why the act of draconification became a forbidden, which begs the question, did these far greater dark skeletons draconify with Zonai stones? Or are they the remnant of a great evil which would explain the Gloomspawn and Gloom Horriblins found here? It is quite possible, as dark is in their name. Equally, these dragons could be tied to a more barbarian time period of the Zonai. You know, from when Zonai ruins and Dracozu Lake dates back to. Another dragon representation this time, in Farrell, which begs yet another question. Could evil Zonai have draconified with their stones and ended up as monstrosities? I think it could be the case, seeing that Zelda transformed into a far smaller light dragon than Ganondorf's unit of a demon dragon. Since this is the thing, the two dragons opposing each other at the end of Tears of the Kingdom are the prime example of how secret stones replace the Triforce in this game. Power of Dragons, at which Ganondorf aims to claim, much like in Ocarina of Time, he's going after the Triforce. It is all connected, but instead of the Triforce and the Goddess, we have secret stones and dragons. Plus the same stone can be wielded by both good and evil souls. Much like the Triforce, which is omnipotent, though that one required balance. Light and dark. But even in darkness, there's sometimes light, as seen when riding Dinral, Naydra and Farosh down in the depths. However, these likely dragon bones with dark in its name attracted Ganondorf's attention prior to draconifying and then being destroyed. What does this point to? Likely that he looked up to them, and so it is a shame that they had been slain. Since this is the thing, dragons that have draconified, like Zelda, are immortal from a health perspective, but not in combat.
Tears of the Kingdom ends with the death of an immortal dragon. when Link and the Master Sword cause the demon dragon to explode. Dragons can be damaged and they can die, which means that the Dark Skeletons might have been killed, perhaps at the hands of a past hero or incarnation of Link, long before any of the ancient battles depicted on murals and tapestries. It could even be the case that these three, which could have themselves been evil demon dragons, were the reason that the act of draconification was forbidden by the Zonai, as dragons are powerful enough to be dangerous not only to the individuals actually swallowing the stones, but also the people around them. The dragons of the surface and the dark dragons of the depths are a perfect contrast, again just like the game's logo. In the Japanese version, the logo doesn't even feature the Master Sword, just two dragons, eating each other's tails in a never-ending loop.
Yin and Yang, as one is recalled by the forces of light and time, and the other explodes. But why the size difference among dragons? It is either good and evil, or as Fishnewt 1331 suggested, the larger ones are males, while all the alive dragons we know and love prior to the final battles are female. After all, Din, Nehru and Veror are golden goddesses, and Zelda is, if we are to believe Skyward Sword, the divine incarnation of Goddess Hylia. So the gender theory might be true after all. Even with that said, we still don't know how many secret stones existed prior to the act of draconification becoming a forbidden one. If we count Dinrol, Naedra and Farosh, at least 10. But if these other dark skeletons also became dragons this way, then we have 13, almost double the amount seen in Tears of the Kingdom. Size matters no doubt, and Dragendorf is a clear example that there might have been similar powerful and terrifying beasts, both in size and behavior, in the past. All 4 dragons we can interact with and farm from in Tears of the Kingdom. So the Light Dragon, Farosh, Naedra and Dinrol, which are all of similar size, but not the Demon Dragon. So I definitely believe that these might have been far more aggressive flying serpents. And that covers it for the Great Dark Skeletons, or as we now have theorized, the Great Dark Dragons, who once terrorized at least the depths, long before the Demon Dragon in the sky. But do you think the Great Dark Skeletons are the remains of slain dragons, or not? And was it a past Link who put an end to their terror? Sound off in the comment section down below. If you haven't already, then leave a like, subscribe and press the notification bell to both my and Zeltik's channel. Why? Since the depths offer an insight into Hyrule that we didn't know, and none of them are stranger than the single cherry tree, and around it the only bluepies of the depths in Bluepie Burrow. Right above where Satori points us to caves where bubble frogs drop bluepies and bubble gems. So to explore far more on these equally spiritual creatures, head over to Zeltik's channel. A big thanks to all of you for watching, and now be sure to check out Zeltik's part of this spiritual collaboration.